with the solemnity of Pentecost, we come to the end of the season of Easter. And I was picturing this season coming to an end, and I thought, what comes next? And I kind of envisioned the world, the history of the world, I guess, as a play in 4 acts, or one of those books, where there are major divisions. You open up and it says part 1 and has some word, or phrase. And I thought, if this were a book and it were in 4 parts, the beginning would say part 1, the creation of the world, and it would be about God creating the world. Or maybe you would say the Father. I'll put it that way. See, part 1, the Father. And I know God created the world, right? Whenever one of the Trinity works or acts, the other 2 are a part of that. But we kind of envision creation coming from the Father, through the Son, with the power of the Holy Spirit. And so we had the creation of the world, and then we would see Adam and Eve and read about their disobedience and kind of the fall of the world, and then the promise, the prophecies, whatever. That would all be in part 1. And then part 2 would be the Son. And it would be all about Jesus, from his, we might say, from the Annunciation, in his birth and his life and his teaching and miracles and all that we read in the Gospels, And then his passion and death, resurrection, and ascension to the Father, And then that closes, kind of, Pentecost closes that and opens part 3. And part 3, I think I would write it, part 3, the Holy Spirit. And then I'd put in parentheses, the church. Because this part is the part where the Holy Spirit is at work, right? And Jesus sent the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Spirit does not work on his own, right? The church, in some ways, and I don't want to get caught up in words, but I also don't want to be too easy, because then you get into theological problems. But I'll put it this way: the Spirit works through the church, and so the Spirit needs the church to work. And we are the church. And so this is the time when the church is active, this 3rd part. And she's continuing Jesus' mission, but she's taking his mission to parts that Jesus didn't touch and in ways that Jesus didn't do. And I call that mission, if you've ever prayed that prayer before Mass, that's in the front cover of the opening of the missalettes, I call it the church's mission of evangelization and mercy. And the church is here, and again, this is very simplified, but to continue the evangelization, right, of the world. To preach the gospel, to preach Jesus Christ, the good news that he brought, and also this ministry of mercy. To continue Jesus' mission of healing the brokenhearted, of binding up wounds, of forgiving sins that we heard in the gospel, of bringing the world to Christ so that Christ can bring it to the Father. And I don't know what I'd call the 4th part of the book. I've thought of different things, and none of them are quite satisfying. But in the 4th part of the book, Jesus comes again and brings everything and everyone who wants to be with the Father to him. So the fourth part of the book, I guess, would be eternal. That would make this a long book. That just occurred to me. Fourth part of the book never ends. But we're in the third part here. And if the church does not do her mission of evangelization and mercy and get the church ready for Jesus, or the world ready for Jesus' return, the Spirit can't do its work. And so each of us has to take that on ourselves in some way, it seems to me. Just as you can't complain about whatever it might be, your family, your parish, your country, your city, your county, whatever, your church, just as you can't complain about something without asking, okay, what am I doing to make this better? So it seems to me we can't become part of the church without asking ourselves, okay, what am I doing to continue this mission? Or what am I doing to take my part in this mission? And if anyone is not in their way to someone at some time evangelizing, giving witness to Christ in their lives, then they're not taking part in the church's mission of evangelization, and then the church's mission is lessened in somewhat. And if any one of us is not at some point to someone, sometime, expressing God's mercy in some way, then we're not taking our part in the church's mission of mercy. And so we weaken that mission in some way. And perhaps lengthen the time for when Jesus comes again. And so I invite you today, because we've all taken part, or most of us have taken our part in Pentecost. The church clearly in the confirmation rite that we'll celebrate tomorrow night here makes a clear connection between Pentecost and confirmation. Confirmation is merely, if I can put it that way, the continuation of Pentecost in the world. And so most of us have taken our part in Pentecost. We've received the Holy Spirit, the same Holy Spirit, to the same degree that the apostles received it. And so now it's our turn to have our little chapter in book 3 of this book. How are we taking our part in the church's mission of evangelization and mercy? And the Spirit not only will help us take our part, but wants to use us in it. And you might think you're too small, you're too uneducated, you're too shy, you're too something, too sick, you're too, busy. That part we can remedy. But you might think we're too something or not something enough to be part of this mission, and it's not true. That's why the Holy Spirit came, is to help weak human beings do God's work. And so I invite you on this Pentecost Sunday to think of yourself in that gospel, in that first reading. Think of yourself and imagine the Holy Spirit coming down and showing itself on top of your head in a little tongue of flame. And ask yourself, what have I done to use that flame? What have I done to use that flame to inflame the world? What am I doing? What could I do to take out my part in the church's mission of evangelization and mercy? The mission that is the church's, but which is helped by the Holy Spirit.